Hey guys, what is going on? Redmast here, and welcome back to the episode of Cards and Castles, where today we are going to be going over the pirate tier lists, of course, continuing on in the series. You guys seem to really enjoy these different tier lists, and it does spark up conversations, which are always awesome to see. So that being said, without further ado, let's hop into the tier list for the pirate faction for the Enchanted Grove. Alright, so the first guy I want to talk about is Mugging. Now, I really just want to do a quick comparison with this card because I feel like it is kind of necessary in my opinion. I preferably, I mean, even though I rank both Mugging and Daggerstorm the same, I find that Mugging's a much better card, and the reason I didn't rank it higher, obviously, is to not really cause a huge debate over it. Well, no, that's number one, and number two, I mean, these cards are kind of both equal in strength. And there's no really real reason to rank them any higher than their B status. I mean, they're decent cards, but they're not like A level or S level. So let me just quick go over why I think Mugging is better than Daggerstorm, and then we can move on to some of the more interesting aspects of the tier list. So, of course, Mugging gives a unit, or you can give an enemy unit, -2 attack and -2 health, and meanwhile gaining treasure 1. Now this kind of is a simple card for the early game, but when you consider Daggerstorm of only giving bleed 1 to 3 random enemy units, it just seems really odd for people to be running Daggerstorm more than Mugging, especially because Mugging can do so much more for your game going down the line rather than just having 3 bleed inflict on 1 or potentially 2 different guys. Now, I do understand the aspect of I want to damage multiple units and kind of get them to a weaker state, but I feel the treasure is a more important aspect when you're playing a pirate deck. When you are playing this deck, you are most likely going to have tools to ramp out bigger units as you go earlier into the game. So, like by turn 4, you might have a T-Rex already, so on and so forth. So I find that this treasure is very important, and it's surprising to me that a lot of people don't actually take advantage of this treasure. Now, of course, there are people who do, which is, really great to see. But I feel like Mugging is just a card that potentially can be used more. And I'm not dissing Daggerstorm. If you guys like to play Daggerstorm, I obviously will not force you to get away from it. But, Mugging, even though I rank them, pretty similar on the tier list, I would just consider Mugging a more versatile tool than Daggerstorm, especially for pirate decks that focus on treasure and whatnot. So, with that being said about, my sort of 2 cents on Mugging versus Daggerstorm, let's move on to a different card and hopefully get some, more in-depth. That's not a word. I think I butchered that that grammar, but let's get, more in-depth in tier list with some of my other cards. So, let's take it right there. Now, the next card I want to talk about is the rat-infested Havel. Now, there is, potentially a interesting reason for why I ranked it the way I did. Rat Havel is, of course, one of only 2 spawner cards in this game, the second one being Alter in the neutral faction. But the reason I ranked Havel at an A and not an S tier like potentially some people hold it to be, of course, being one of only 2 spawners, Rat-infested Havel really has 2 major weaknesses. One, it is of course, only a pirate card. Now, the factionization of this card definitely hurts its potential for being an S-rank card, seeing as how you can only play it in pirate decks. But that's not really the big weakness of the 2. I would just say that's sort of an obvious one, the fact that it's factionized in one faction rather than being a neutral where it can be put into every faction possible. And the second reason is the units that come out of the Havel. Now, despite them being fast, the rats are only 1/1, which can easily be fixed, but sometimes a deck does not have room to support rat buffs. So essentially, you might just have a building generating 1/1 rat every 1/1 rats, every turn. But what is that really going to do for you in the long run? Of course, you can build up a lot of rats, so that way you technically have 4 rats, making them like a 4/4 combination. But even then, it still doesn't really justify running the rat Havel in the first place when you have, no buffs to support them. Now, I mean, it's most likely that people will be running buffs if they are running Havel. Obviously, Blacksmith and Armory are great cards to pair with Rats, but if you aren't really able to run the support that Havel needs, and then I don't really think it's necessary running the Havel in the first place. If I did feel that it was good for every pirate deck, then if obviously it would be getting an S rank. But because of those sort of two big weaknesses, when compared to Alter, and there's no other cards really compare it to because these two are the only spawners. Obviously, Havel is the weaker version. Again, due to factorization and the fact that you really need to run buffs to justify running the Havel. So, with that being said about Havel, let's move on to a different card that I think might pique some interest. And I am, of course, referring to Rusty Hooks. Now, Rusty Hooks has always been sort of a unit that's been around for a little while now since Arcanon War, so it's pretty much, I think, around 2 expansions old, if I'm correct, if on my timeline. I know, uh, yeah, I believe that's the right number. Anyway, uh, since because of Rusty Hooks has been around for a while, a lot of people have just really brushed him off. But I feel like the fact that Rusty Hooks is such a unique card, and the fact that it can really do a lot to really change up the board, if played correctly, can really do a lot for a game. So Rusty Hooks is obviously a 1/3 unit. But his ability is, again, the reason why he's unique. He's got a range, despite being, also sort of a melee unit. So we can just essentially drag any sort of enemy that he's got with that hook, which is a very, very cool thing for a unit. Now, what I feel like what turns a lot of people away from Rusty Hooks is the fact that it's just got one attack. It can't really do a lot of damage. Sure, it can chip things, but not really have enough power to do something. But this is where I bring the same argument about Havel into play here. It's all about the stats. So if you are carrying Armory and Blacksmith in a pirate deck, just like I said for Genevieve in the Crusaders, the reason why she's overlooked, especially now, is because she's got a simple 3 attack. Compared to her gold slot, which is 7, where you have things like Craxus, the Judge from Arbiter's Return, and Dremoth, they all have much bigger attacks, well, Judge not by much, than Genevieve. And, what really makes Genevieve special is her armor and resolve. But I kind of bring up that same argument with Rusty Hooks, where if you give this guy the right buffs, he can become a pretty big force on the board. If you Blacksmith maybe an armory or 2 later, because nowadays people are pretty much always running at least maybe 1 or 2 armories. If you're running those armories, Rusty Hooks isn't a bad card for you to consider if you have an open slot. I think what I recently saw with the Crusaders is after I sort of put out that video, I did see a little more Genevieve out there on the board in TV matches when Crusader decks popped up here and there. And we did certainly find one when we were facing off in that ranked with red. You guys remember one guy threw out a Genevieve, and that's actually how I lost the game. So it definitely, if you guys are interested in trying a new card, I say give Rusty Hooks a try. I know he may not be at everyone's easily disposable, or might not be easily obtained for everyone due to his legend status, but it's definitely a card to try out, and one that I think deserves an A ranking, not an S ranking, because it is weak in some regards. Obviously, the 1 attack and the 3 health is easily burnable, but again, give this card a try, see what you think, or and if you guys like him, stick with him for a little while. I certainly enjoy him. I wish I was able to play him more in some of the pirate decks, but I'm trying to fit him in where I can. So, with that being said about Rusty Hooks, let's move on to our next card. Now, the next card I want to talk about is Murder. Now, since Murder's changed, of course, to only destroy a unit with 5 health or less, a lot of people have been turned away from Murder. To them, it's not really a strong card, because you have to have that sort of health requirement to even use it. However, I kind of think otherwise, and it's the reason I give this card an A, is probably due to the fact that Murder is a cheap card. It's only 5 to really pull off. Of course, that may be your entire turn to murder a unit, but in this gold cost range, not a lot of things should have over 5, except for the few big things, such as Grendel or King Crab, maybe. A lot of stuff can be destroyed by Murder, and I just don't think people run it, because they want sort of that direct removal, which is why they run Mercenary Execution over the Murder, which is alright, but I feel like Murder hasn't really had a chance to shine, as of lately because of what's been going around. A lot of building stuff, which kind of just defeats the whole purpose of murder. Can only destroy a unit, not a building. Um, but then again, people still run mercenary executions, so I mean, murder has again been put down because of that health requirement to destroy a unit, but I feel like it's still pretty powerful to use. And I bring up the same argument with Rusty Hooks. If you guys want to see what I'm talking about, give it a try. It's a card that everyone should have at their disposal, even if you're just starting the game, because it is a basic card. So it's not, if you are running a pirate deck and need that removal, but you do not have Mercenary Execution, I would definitely consider running Murder because it's cheaper than Mercenary Execution. Sure, it has the health requirement, but if you can probably chip some health off, because I mean they're not that far from 5 health. A lot of these guys. I mean even Kraken. Look. I mean he's only 5 health. That's a murder target. Troll Gunner's a murder target. I'm kind of just going through cards here. King Crab's a murder target. Serpent Witch is a murder target. So everything technically can be a murder target nowadays. At least for the pirate faction. I know there's a couple of bigger boys down the line, but I feel like if you are running murder, I don't think you're going to be too disappointed, especially because it'll work most of the time. So that being said, I think I'm getting kind of lost in my words on murder here. Good card. Recommend, just like Rusty Hooks, give it a try, maybe at 1 or 2 copies, and see how you like it. But the reason why I market it it's cheap and I think better for your deck rather than placing a Mercenary's Execution in. So, with that being said, let's move on to our final card of the day, which will be Villaroth, the Devourer. Now, Villaroth is a very interesting pirate card. For 7 gold, you get this 2/6 body that can destroy any enemy. I say that 5 times fast. That is damaged by Villaroth. Now, that's pretty good. So essentially this guy is a walking murder, which kind of surprises me why he's not used too much in a lot of different pirate decks. I mean, essentially, if you are running Mercenary's Execution, then why aren't you running Villaroth? It kind of brings up that argument. Or you can argue that the Execution and Murder can be completely swapped out for Villaroth, seeing as how this guy is a walking murder machine. Now, the reason I don't rank him higher, obviously, it's a hefty cost to invest in Villaroth. But I don't think this card is terrible whatsoever, and I feel like he's just that A ranking because you can use him more. You can essentially just tap the guy. Even if this guy has 1 attack, it can just, boom, there he goes, blown up someone because he just tapped them. It's a very strong dragon. Maybe that's why people don't like to use him. They feel like because he's a dragon, they gotta run a dragon deck to use him. I don't think that's completely true. Villaroth is a solid card to throw into some decks. Obviously, green yellow is a good one. If you're running sort of a greed deck, you can bring this guy out earlier, maybe even, and cause some trouble on the board. I don't really know what happened to Villaroth. I mean, I know people used to use him quite a bit, but nowadays you don't really see him too much, and maybe again that's because of his legend status. But for those of you who are willing, again, if you guys want, I think Villaroth's a solid actually inclusion into a deck. I was gonna say like try it for yourself, but I've said that already for the past 2 cards. But I think with Villaroth, I feel a little bit different. I don't want to say like the same thing about Villaroth. I think he's a solid option. Throw him in to your deck, and I don't think you're going to be disappointed. I wouldn't say just try him. Actually, this guy's a more likely success than Murder or Rusty Hooks in a deck because it can do a lot more than those two for your deck. So, if that makes sense. I might be getting a little lost in my words here. I know it's trying to kind of bring it out into words is probably the hardest part of making these videos, but I'm doing my best. So that's the thought that counts, right? So with that being said, I think that covers the pirate tier list. Again, if you guys want to check the full pirate tier list, it is down in the description. If I didn't mention that, I don't think I mentioned that at the beginning of the video. Like I said, for the past 2 videos, full descriptions are always down, or full lists are always down in the description. Dang it. Yeah. Sometimes articulating the words is difficult, and then you mess up on that. Anyway, let's just cut to the last part. And with that being said, guys, that's going to do it for this video. If you guys enjoyed, please be sure to leave a like on it, share with your friends, of course, comment down below your thoughts on the pirate faction, and if you guys disagree or agree with cards on my tier list, explain to me why in the comment section below. And like I said before, or at least I tried to, the full tier list for the pirate faction is in the description below, so go ahead and check that out if you haven't done so already, and tell me what you think, like I said, in the comment section below. And while you guys are down there, if you haven't done so already, please make sure to hit that subscribe button. Help show your support to the channel, help us grow all by clicking that subscribe button at no additional cost to you. So with that being all from me for now, until next time, guys, stay gaming.